Good afternoon, it's Tim from Australian Hiker doing a gear review of the Therm-A-Rest Neo-Air Xlite range. Here I've got three of what is a very large range, and we've chosen to review the main ones that are used by hikers at the moment. And that is the Neo-Air Xlite Women's, the Neo-Air Xlite, and the Neo-Air Uberlite, which is the newest one in their range. As you can see, size-wise, they're not particularly large, but particularly looking at the Uberlite, it's actually quite tiny. So it's worthwhile just doing a comparison all at once to see how they stack up. Size-wise, as you can see, they pack down quite small, and they're not going to take, in the case of the Uberlite, it's almost virtually a handful. It's actually quite a small little mat. So let's go through and inflate these and see what they look like when they're put together. Okay, so we've gone through and inflated these three mats, but before we talk about them more in detail, why do we need a sleeping mat for? And there's probably two main reasons you want to consider for having a sleeping mat. One, the ground is pretty hard, and I'm sitting here on this ground sheet from one of my tents. I'm not going to get a very good night's sleep unless I've got a bit of padding underneath. I tend to be a side sleeper, so sleeping on my side, I put a lot of weight through the bones of my hips, and again, if I'm lying on bare ground, I'm not going to be very comfortable. And while I can use the foam mats, I just find the inflatable sleeping mats to be much more comfortable as a side sleeper. The other reason for using a sleeping mat is protection from the cold. If you're lying on cold ground, in fact I'm sitting here on the ground at the moment, I've got a very lightweight protector for underneath the tents, which I'm sitting on, and I'm actually getting reasonably cold. And that's because I'm actually, this thin sheet of material is not providing any warmth at all, and not protecting me from the cold, which I'm absorbing from the ground. These mats will help provide an insulation layer and provide a bit of warmth and keep you warm as you're sleeping through the night. Okay, so let's talk about the mats more specifically. So we have the three mats, and certainly the one that most people are more familiar with is the Neo-Air Xlite. This is this mustard coloured mat. Comes in three sizes, small, regular and large. This is the regular one through here. And we'll compare, because they're all roughly the same sort of size, we'll compare the regular sizings. Weight-wise, this is a 340 gram mat. It has an R value of 3.2, and what that means is that's how much insulation that it actually provides. So an R value of 3.2 is going to give you reasonable warmth from virtually mid-spring through to around about mid to late autumn time, but it's not going to be particularly useful if you're snow camping. But for most people, this mat will work quite well. The next one, which is the newest mat on the market, is the Neo-Air Uberlite. Now again, comes in small, regular and large, and you can see size-wise it's pretty much an identical sizing. In fact, it is an identical sizing to the standard Uberlite, the standard Xlite. And this mat weighs 250 grams, so it's around about 90 grams lighter in weight. Not a huge amount, but when you're talking about people who want to go ultralight, that makes a difference. It has an R value of 2, and it's classed really as a mat for the warmer seasons of the year, so late spring through to probably early autumn, to keep you, give you enough warmth and comfort through the night time. Comes in this darkish bluey black colour, so very recognisable. Now the way they tend to get this mat a bit lighter in weight, they do it by two ways. The Xlite mat is a 30 denier mat, as is the one we'll talk about in a moment, the women's Xlite. The Xlite is a 15 denier, so it's a lighter weight material, which means it's not going to be as robust if you're a bit rough with your gear. You want to pay a bit of attention about putting a ground sheet down, just so you don't stab it with any sharp sticks or rocks. The other way they get the lightness into this mat is it's missing the insulating material that's inside the other two. With the straight Xlite mat, one of the complaints is you tend to get a lot of noise. There still is the noise through here, but you're not seeming to get that additional layer of material that's creating the additional noise. But particularly aimed at people who want to go really lightweight. The third of our mats is the Neo-Air Xlite women's version. Now, I think the reason they class this as a women's version, it's slightly smaller in size. So instead of being 183 centimetres like these two bottom mats are, this one's 168 centimetres. So the assumption here is that women are shorter, and not always the case. But as a result, they also give you a slightly thicker mat, and the R value is 3.9. So if you're a male, it's a bit shorter in height, and prefer a slightly warmer mat, this version is probably going to be the mat to go for. Weight-wise, again, it's around about 340 grams, so even though it's a slightly thicker mat, it's a slightly shorter mat, so it ends up being the same size as the standard Xlite mat. And comes in this bright yellowish sort of colour. Okay, so a couple of other features on these mats. You can notice that the baffles run across the mats. Some people find that the edges can be a bit soft and they tend to slide off the mats during the night time. It's not a problem I've ever had with these, or I know that some people do, including my wife Jill. They are fairly firm all the way through, and you can blow them up and have them a bit soft or a bit harder depending on how you like them. I tend to prefer my mat fairly firm. The inflation valve is just a small twist valve which you blow into, and then you close it off. There are some other types of valves that are a bit easier to go through and blow up. Don't take so much breaths, and you can use pumps on them. But these valves have worked pretty well over the years, and they've continued to be used on these current range of mats. Now, as far as laying on the mats are concerned, I'll just throw this one off the side. This mat through here is my mat. And it's around about 3 years old, lasted fairly well, haven't had any punctures or holes in it during this time, but I do look after it. So if I go through and lay down on the mat, and you can sort of hear there's a bit of crinkly sort of noise. I tend not to notice this, but I know that if you're in a hut or in an enclosed area, it can annoy people, but it's not really an issue that I tend to really think about. Size-wise, I've got a bit of pretty much top to toe. It's pretty much going to cover my height. And width-wise as well, my arms can be off it. In fact, once it's in a sleeping bag, my arms tend not to go anywhere. But it's, again, very comfortable. So as I said, as a side sleeper, I can roll onto my side, I can sleep on my back, and I don't have my bones or my hips digging into the ground. So very, very comfortable. Now, price-wise, and this is where people tend to walk a bit at buying the Therm-A-Rest mats. The Xlite mat which I'm sitting on at the moment currently is selling for around about $350. The woman's Xlite mat, $330. And the Xlite mat is selling at $361. It's a fairly new mat on the market. Prices are still a bit higher than the current Xlite mat itself. Now, that makes them some of the dearest sleeping mats on the market at the moment. But this is where we come down to just talking about cost and value for money. As I said, this mat here, which has got a bit of dirt on it, this is my mat. It's 3 years old. It's done the Larapinta Trail, it's done the Overland Track, it's done the Bibbulmun Track, and a number of other weekend hikes and shorter hikes in between. It's lasted really well, and short of me not looking after it or deciding I want a new mat, this mat will last for a number of years yet. So when you're talking about, yes, it's an expensive mat, but it is a very, very comfortable mat, and it's no good going hiking to be uncomfortable. I've tried the thinner mats, the foam cell mats, and while they might be a bit more durable and you can throw them around, I just don't get a good night's sleep on them, and it's just not worth it. Bibbulmun Track, 5 weeks I slept on this mat, and had, as far as possible, very good nights and very long nights sleep with it. So while, as I said, they're not cheap, but they are very good value for money. Okay, so just to wrap up, the Therm-A-Rest Xlite range, as I said, there's a number of other mats in the range, including the Therm, which is the heavy grade, much warmer, particularly if you're sleeping in the snow or sleeping in the really cold winters. We'll look at that at a later stage. But these Xlite range, the 3 of them, the most common ones available, definitely worthwhile considering as a range of sleeping mats if you're looking for a high quality, very comfortable sleeping mat. They really are well worth using, and Jill and I have been happy with our mats we've had so far. Talk to you later.